This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Grateful to have you joining us on this episode of Real Talk. In just a second, Charles Adler chimes in on the legacy of Brian Mulroney, a record holder in Canadian politics, the most successful federal election result ever back in 1984 when his progressive conservatives snagged just a whole bunch of seats, but obviously left the party in a different scenario years later. Curious to see how the Titan of Talk, our Emmy Award-winning colleague who joins us the first episode of every week, will categorize and characterize Mulroney's legacy. Chuck used his column over the weekend in the Winnipeg Free Press to touch on Mulroney's legacy, and it got personal. So you can expect a couple stories coming up today. Plus, we're going to dig into the Alberta budget. I'll get Adler's take on it, and then, as you know, because it is the first Monday of the month, it means that Shauna Feth is going to join us. She's the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. Their business is business. And so what does the Alberta budget mean for you? If you work for an Alberta business, if you are an Alberta business owner operator, or if you're from somewhere else in Canada, keeping an eye on what Danielle Smith's first real budget looks like. This was a big one. This is the Danielle Smith government setting the tone, basically saying, here's what our top priorities are going to be. Here's where we're, forecasting oil to be. Here's where we're prioritizing some of the initiatives we've been talking about. Here's what we are going to do. Here's what we're not going to do. Obviously, a lot of budget talk, people's eyes gloss over. Let's be honest. A lot of people sit there and go, whatever. They want to know what it means for them. And so that's what the Alberta Chambers of Commerce have done, have made it their mandate to what's going on. The Alberta government obviously sends its message, and then the groups like the Alberta Chambers of Commerce are going to help us understand what it means for us. That's the mission and mandate of today's episode. Before we get to Adler, in 30 seconds, I want to put a call out to those of you that are looking for a bit of a change right now. You're getting up, you're going to work, but you can't stand it. You're running the shower this morning, kind of leaning against the wall. You know that you're like leaning against the tile going, how many more days? How many more weeks am I going to be at this job that's just not filling my cup? It's not fulfilling me. It's not floating my boat. Am I talking directly to you? If so, check out Relo.ca. That's R-E-L-O. That's the first step toward launching a rewarding career in real estate. Relo's got affordable online courses that'll make it easy for you to pass your exam and get that license so you can run your own business, set your own hours, and be your own boss. Plus, unlimited earning potential, and you'll be helping people every single day as they buy or sell their homes. Best part about Relo, they're super committed to your success. They've got online live instructors. They host prep sessions every Saturday. Plus, once you've launched your career, there's resources there to help you. They want to see you succeed. And because you're hearing about this on Real Talk, you can knock 20% off any Relo course. Yeah, that's right, 20% off. Just use the promo code Real Talk, all one word, Real Talk, when you get started today at Relo.ca. We get to hang out with Charles Adler once a week, and sometimes we know exactly what we're going to get into, and then every once in a while something will pop up last minute and kind of shake things up, and Chuck, that's exactly the case this morning. As we welcome you back to the show, for the benefit of those on the podcast, you're wearing what appear to be, are those blue blockers? What's up with sunglasses inside? I mean, aside from the fact that obviously you're a celebrity, but what's up with the sunglasses?
Well, it's not about my celebrity, it's about yours. Your star power is just giving me glare, so I need
okay.
Blue blocker. I was watching your interview with Nate Horner, the finance minister, Danielle Smith's finance minister.
Yeah,
and you ground him into a piece of hamburger. I mean, but you were so subtle about it. You didn't make him. The idea, of course, is to turn the guest into hamburger without making them feel like hamburger.
You want them to feel like filet mignon.
So anyway, the point has been made with the visual. For those listening, the visual has been removed. No longer wearing the blue blockers. But I just wanted to make the point that Danielle Smith runs as an ideological conservative, cut taxes, et cetera, et cetera. But you pointed out in your sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle way that the new provincial budget results in increased taxes, meaning because it deprives municipalities of what municipalities right across the province want, they're going to have to raise their property taxes. So when Nate Horner says there's only one taxpayer, and every conservative has been saying that forever, he's losing the plot. That's the point, Minister Horner. There's only one taxpayer. And if you're screwing the municipalities, you're screwing municipal taxpayers. That one taxpayer is now going to be paying more taxes, not less, because of the budget. There were some other things in there that we could get into. I thought the point that Griffith, the former minister, was making, Doug Griffith, was an interesting point about the Heritage Fund. I never thought I would hear anyone say that. Now, he's a really, really smart guy, so I have no doubt that he knows exactly what he's talking about. He happens to be one of those politicians I have a soft spot for, a lot of respect for. And of course, he's now based very, very much in Edmonton as the CEO of a business there.
Yeah, Edmonton Chamber, yeah.
At Edmonton Chamber. But, to say that Alberta has to be careful about having a very, very wealthy heritage fund, because it will, I guess, A, create a lot of envy among other provinces, and B, it might make it difficult for Alberta to ask for its fair share of money from the feds. I think it's a really interesting point, because I think both those things are true. But I just, even though I don't, I don't have a residency in Alberta, my driver's license is in Alberta, as everyone knows. I'm beyond a soft spot because of as much time as I've spent in Alberta, so I could be considered, I guess, an Alberta expat. But beyond that, Albertans have been the best to me, giving me the biggest opportunities. So that's where the emotional real estate in my heart is.
Hey, we get it. We're all rich here, and you want it. You want in. You want your piece of the pie. We get it. Have your say. Do your thing. You want it. We get it. You're buttering us up. We get it.
I'm a Peter Lougheed conservative, and I thought that was one of the things that Peter Lougheed stressed. It was foundational for him, and I thought it made a lot of sense. It was to have a massive heritage fund, to have something approaching what the Norwegians have, and therefore Alberta, and if you don't mind me saying, we wouldn't be as I guess blown around like a leaf in the wind. When it comes to oil prices, oil prices are always going to go up and down, and we always have to listen to this stuff about boom and bust. But it's great relief against the boom versus bust cycle if you've got interest coming off a massive heritage fund. So, with all due respect to the former Minister Griffiths, I disagree with him. I think we ought to have as large a heritage fund as possible, as long as building up that heritage fund isn't depriving individuals, isn't depriving municipalities of the kind of services that create the quality of life that I think is enviable right across the country.
Okay, so for people who didn't catch it, it was our March 1st episode. I recommend people do. It was basically our budget recap, and we were joined by President and CEO of the Edmonton Chamber, Doug Griffiths, the CEO of the Edmonton Downtown Business Association, Panita McBrien, and of course, the Honorable Nate Horner, Alberta's Finance Minister. Good conversation. And so Griffiths basically argues that while Danielle Smith is musing, they're talking about getting Alberta's Heritage Savings Trust Fund up to $250 billion to $250 billion, which, whatever. I'm not a finance minister. I can't even manage my own finances. If anybody
but
saw
but Ryan, that's over a very, very long time.
Sure,
horizon.
not that long of a time, but the point is right now it's at like 20. So when you're talking about getting it to $250 billion, and you have like shortages in healthcare, and you're making cuts everywhere, and the Alberta municipalities are crying foul about the budget. We talked about it on March 1st. They said they were extremely disappointed with the budget. We've heard them on this show before talking about the infrastructure deficit. On one hand, people are wondering, well, what's the point of building up these massive savings accounts if you're not covering your day-to-day? If you're not offering the services that people would expect in a province like Alberta. But the Coles notes, you've already teed it up. Former Minister Doug Griffiths, former Minister of Municipal Affairs, now with the Edmonton Chamber, basically made the argument in one sentence, I would say, that Alberta can't have too much money squirreled away, too much wealth squirreled away, because then the feds will look at a province like Alberta when Alberta comes with its hand out, like the other provinces, or with the other provinces, and the feds will say, pay it out of your own kitty. Pay it yourself, right? Provinces, the have-not provinces, will look at Alberta and say, well, what are you doing? You're sitting on this massive fortune that the rest of us don't have. It's not equal. It's not in the spirit of confederation. I thought it was an interesting argument that he made, but it didn't land with you, obviously. You don't buy it.
Well, no, I agree with him that those things would happen. So, once again, he's a very smart guy, and he's sat in many of those kinds of meetings. But it's a part of Canada I'm not crazy about. I think every single province has incredible resource opportunities, and every single province can be creating heritage funds. So rather than envying, I mean, this is just the way I've lived my life. Yes, I was dirt poor. Our family, immigrant refugee family, we didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. That's the way we were. But we weren't going to be into envy. We had wealthy customers. My dad's hole-in-the-wall tailor shop. We had depended on wealthy people because wealthy people could afford more tailoring than non-wealthy people. And wealthy people wanted to dry clean every damn thing, and that was wonderful for us as dry cleaners. So I appreciated the fact that Canada produced people with wealth, and rather than waste a single drop of blood or emotion wealthing them, learn from the wealthy as opposed to envy the wealthy. So I think the rest of the country ought to learn from Alberta instead of envying Alberta. And if they envy Alberta now and they envy Alberta tomorrow and the next day, that's their problem. I mean, does a hockey team that's a championship team worry about the fact that most teams aren't championship teams? You want to have the Connor McDavids, and you would never say, well, no, let's not have people like Connor McDavid around because, some of, the Arizona Coyotes may envy us.
Two thoughts. Number one, for context, we never know when people are going to hear these interviews. You're making these comments about the Edmonton Oilers approximately 12 hours removed from a 6-1 drubbing of Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So everybody in Edmonton, including Infamous and I, are walking with a bit more of a swagger this morning. Yeah. So let's just point that out. And number two, with the amount of money that Alberta's been spending on nationwide media buys, including advertising about electricity rates in Ontario, I like the idea you're up with, Chuck. Maybe a new billboard. Alberta, learn from us. Hey, we could run those billboards in Ontario, Quebec, BC. I mean, just think of how well that campaign would land.
Brian, I have lived everywhere in this country, and everywhere, including where I live right now, has an opportunity to develop resources, just like Alberta. It might not amount to the same amount of money, but it's large. I mean, I'm living in Manitoba, where we have opportunities to mine for lithium and all of the other minerals. I mean, all of the minerals that are necessary for battery production around the world. So we could be doing that, and we could be exporting great mineral wealth, and we could be creating our own heritage fund. And for all kinds of political reasons that I don't want to get into, the people who budget in this province budget us for being have-not. It's an embarrassment for me. It's an embarrassment for me as a Manitoban that we are a have-not province. We don't have to be. And Alberta never has to worry, in my mind, never has to worry about other people envying Alberta. One of the problems I have sometimes with Alberta politics, as you know, is that I think some people in Alberta generate this envy of Quebec. I understand the business about some of the advantages that Quebec has, and clearly the fact that a lot of equalization money advantages Quebec over the years. I get all of that, but nobody should envy the people of Quebec in terms of the taxes that they're paying. The average Quebecer pays far more in tax than the average Albertan, and the reason for that is simple. Alberta is much smarter at money management, much smarter at infrastructure management. Alberta is the province that ought to be envied, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're saying. Let the rest of the country learn from Alberta.
Yeah, interesting comment in our live chat from Travis, who says Chuck makes the same mistake every time, equating wealth with competence. Interesting comment. Steve says Alberta will separate from Canada before the feds can get the money. I don't think that's going to happen. I had an interesting conversation with a friend the other day. I pitched this. We were talking about the pharmacare plan, and Alberta's kind of said no to the feds right now. Alberta just wants the money from the proposed pharmacare plan. Says, give us the money, we'll administer it according to our own parameters. Quebec basically gets that deal. And I said to a friend, have we ruled out separating together? The campaign could be very compelling. Alberta and Quebec could separate together, and I think the marketing campaign could be very effective. Do you have a thought? Do you have a thought on the proposed pharmacare plan? I know there's not like a ton of details in front of people right now. I'm going to ask Shauna Feth about this with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. Is that something that you put much thought into over the last few days? We got the details on Friday.
I probably haven't put as much thought into it as I will once I actually see the thing rolled out. I mean, the motivation for the pharmacare thing is purely political. The Liberals wouldn't be doing this unless the NDP were putting a full Nelson on the neck of the Trudeau government. So I mean that's why it's happening. But Quebec has had pharmacare for the longest time. And Quebec does have some social programs and benefits that many others don't. And Alberta can take some of the credit because of some of the equalization, no doubt about it. As far as Alberta is saying they want the money and they'll institute a similar program, you talk about competence. I'd have to see the details. That one aspect of pharmacare I do like is that there are some people who have not, of modest means. That's how we like to say it in this country. Some people who just don't have much money, and they are diabetic, and apparently pharmacare will take care of their needs that haven't been taken care of until now. It will make life a little more affordable. But I don't want to blow a lot of altruistic smoke around on this stuff because the proof is in the pudding, and I'll have to see how it is administered and how it is received before I get too hot and bothered by it.
Nobody knows too much about it. It could be interesting. I know for a lot of people, I think the business angle on it is that they have good benefits already. It's not something that a lot of people feel like the feds should be spending tens of billions of dollars on over the next number of years. But if you talk to somebody that needs prescription drugs that they can't afford right now and they don't have the benefits for it, then this is obviously something that's going to land in a big way for them. So big win. We'll see for the NDP how it plays out, obviously. And then obviously that means it's a big win for the Liberals if they get to keep governing. The NDP is not going to trigger a federal election right now anyway.
No, of course not.
Everybody knows that. So
the jig is up for Jagmeet Singh if he does that, because if he triggers a federal election, I mean, it's pretty well known now that the polls make it drop dead obvious. I mean, Pierre Poilievre would have to do something obscene with a farm animal in the campaign to lose the election. He'll likely win a majority if there's an election right now. And if he wins a majority, it's, bye-bye Jagmeet Singh. The NDP will immediately, no matter what the NDP says about how loyal they are to their leaders, they're not. That's what the record shows. If the NDP is tossed, and they would, lose a significant amount of seats, the most obvious thing that would happen is the NDP would hold another leadership convention. It's their favorite way of raising money, and Jagmeet Singh would say goodbye. Nobody has to feel sorry for him. Jagmeet Singh, I don't want to play the wealth envy thing here, because I just said I'm not into envy, so that's not my motivation here. But Jagmeet Singh has a lot of dough. He's, Mr. Rolex. He's Mr. BMW. He always has been. It's got nothing to do with, people think, well, he's in it for the pension. No, he's not. He's in it for the status. He's in it for the power. It's something he wants to do, and I'll try to give him credit. He's in it to do public service. But Jagmeet Singh, if he loses his gig, is going to do just fine. He and his family will do well because he comes from money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel sorry for any politician, to be honest. They have the best pensions in the country. On the live chat, Saucy Seawitch, I just wanted to say the handle. Saucy Seawitch says, one important thing to remember, bringing this back to Alberta, is that a country's pocketbook should not be treated the same as a personal one. Surpluses are useless if services are cut to the bone. It's a fair point. James says we could do something really crazy, like, returning corporate tax rates to what they were before Jason Kenney, which were still the lowest in the country. That from James. And a lot of people would like to see corporations taxed bigger in Alberta. But of course, that's one of the big Alberta advantages, Charles.
Yeah. I'm not for that. Once again, people who desperately want me to behave like a progressive are going to lose. I think it is a tremendous advantage for Alberta to have the corporate tax rate where it is. I'm not big on raising tax rates at all. I do think that's always been a ridiculous class envy game. The more head offices you can have in a society, the more wealth is going to be created in the society. Powerful corporations, rich corporations end up, and every Albertan ought to know this, end up creating all sorts of opportunities for small business. Small business is the engine of the economy. I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but I'm sure Ryan, you could access them quickly. I would bet the ranch that more small businesses are created in Alberta per hour than they are anywhere else in Canada.
Well, I mean, we have, this is perfect timing. Shauna Feth will join us in like 10 minutes, President, CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. That's her wheelhouse, so we'll ask her about it. I was going to lead with this. I saw this. I don't know if you saw this posting. Are you a LinkedIn guy? Are you on LinkedIn? You don't strike me as
I'm technically on LinkedIn, but
you're not checking your LinkedIn every morning. This was just posted. It shows they've already got 48 applicants. It was posted 2 days ago. I'm surprised to see this. The president and chief executive officer for the CBC. The job posting is on LinkedIn. President and CEO of the CBC. It lets you know that, skills, helpful skills would be broadcasting, broadcast journalism, and more. You'll have between 5,000 and 10,000 employees, it says. Lets you know that you'd be, of course, steering the corporation that celebrates Canadian culture and supports democratic life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you got an interview for this job, if you put in your application and they called you back and you had that first interview, what would your take be? I mean, you're this is the top job, president and CEO. They'd be curious to know the stamp you would put on the CBC. How would you apply for the job? What would your message be?
Well, the first thing I would do is I'd put my, president, CEO of CBC, I'd have to put my nerd glasses on. Do I look more
very smart?
CEO,
very smart now, yeah.
I look much more CBC presidential now with the nerd glasses, don't I?
You're ready for the big paycheck, yeah.
Thank you, Sobeys Optical. Anyway, here's the deal. I would cut the fat, and I would suggest that the CBC has so many services that absolutely nobody listens to and nobody watches, including CBC drama. So I would cut that fat, and I would put more money into news, especially local news. Yes, local news. That's where everyone seems to be cutting. We talk about services. I don't care where you are, and I don't want to play the politics for idiots game, pinning everyone as right wing, left wing, in the middle. Most Canadians need more local news. The private sector, for all sorts of reasons we could get into, has been falling off the cliff on that. And so if we're talking about public service here, news is a public service. Local news is a public service, and I would put more money in. So if I were applying for the CEO, a job with or without my nerd glasses, I'd be saying much less money for things that nobody pays attention to, in terms of no Canadians are paying attention to, and much more money into local news, whether it's radio or TV. And I developed a streaming service because that's where so many eyeballs are right now.
Yeah, interesting to see who gets the job, and obviously, I mean, it's like, you look right now what's happening in broadcasting, what's happening in journalism, and it's dire. I don't want to spend like all of our time every week talking about this, because I think a lot of people tune out if you don't work in media. I mean, obviously for some people, the 6 o'clock, the supper hour news was a big deal for them growing up, or getting the newspaper. My parents still get the physical newspaper. I love it. I tell them every time I'm down.
Them.
Oh, it's fantastic. I was talking to my dad the other weekend. I was down there and like flipping through the physical, like the paper, right? The Calgary Herald, the National Post, having a coffee, and I love that stuff. Maybe because it kind of takes me back. I don't know. But my dad and I were musing. I said, how many people do you figure on your street actually get the physical newspaper? He kind of smirked. He goes, like, maybe we're the only ones on the whole street. I don't know. I can't even, like, is there even like a delivery kid anymore with like a wagon, pulls the wagon? And like, I don't think so. When's the last time you saw somebody delivering newspapers? Anyway, the point being, there's been a dramatic shift in how people are getting information. And so how should Canada's public on one hand, I think it increases in a major way. You can make an argument that it ramps up and reiterates the importance of what they do. If you look at this sort of for-profit news, and if we can all suggest that we value journalism to a certain degree, like do you value politicians being held accountable? Do you value public information being made available? Do you value your community stories being told? Like, I don't know, who in their right mind would say no at that level. And so if the business of that storytelling is I can't even say flawed. Like, what's much more? It's ridden with cancer. It's dying on the vine. It's fucked, is the way that I would put it. Then you have to look at a nation like Canada. In the United States, obviously there will be differences here. I'm not trying to draw direct parallels, but something like PBS or something like NPR, maybe they're donor funded, maybe whatever. There's some government funds there, but like, you have to look at an outlet maybe 10 years down the line and say, like, what's the state of journalism going to be in Canada? And I would suggest humbly that if it's completely screwed, and if no talented people are working in there, or no young up-and-comers are wanting to work in that industry, then where does that leave us? And so I think the direction of the CBC moving forward is something that the majority of people should care about, and not just because tax dollars are going to the CBC. Like, let's talk about storytelling. Let's talk about communication. Let's talk about history and recording it,
Well, look, I think the CBC unfortunately has become this ideological toy. And that's why I often say, politics for idiots just labels people left wing, right wing, in the middle. Most mainstream people need services. So yes, all of what you're talking about is necessary in a public broadcaster, because telling local stories matters, telling national stories matters, because democracy matters. Democracy counts on a number of things. One, it counts, of course, on the character of leaders, the character of the population, the character of public services, and yes, the law. Democracy absolutely depends on the law. And by the law, I'm not just talking about the courts. I'm talking about police. I'm talking about everything that involves public safety. Edmonton, downtown Edmonton, has a public safety problem. Clearly, the most recent budget does much more to address the issue of the Calgary Flames staying in Calgary than it does public safety in Edmonton. That's unfair. That's inequitable. That's about politics. The Calgary is being rewarded for a whole host of reasons. That's where the UCP gets votes. It doesn't get votes in Edmonton, so Edmonton gets punished. That's unfair, and journalism needs to cover that story every day. And if the privates aren't going to do that, because the privates are all running newsrooms where sometimes they just have one person, and that one person isn't doing any journalism. That person is just, making sure that the press releases get read. So it's an embarrassment to journalism. It's an embarrassment to Canada. It's an embarrassment to the way we run things. But we absolutely have to make sure that we have a public service. In this case, we call it a public broadcaster, and it's no less important than having a fire department.
Talk to me about the memo to Mulrooney. Back in your talk radio, like back in the heyday, talk to us about the memo to Mulrooney as we remember the Canadian Prime Minister who passed late last week.
So I always like to put all my biases in the shop window. I was very much progressive, conservative, provincially, federally, whether I lived in Alberta, lived in Ontario, I voted for PCs, and federally I voted for PCs, so I voted for Brian Mulroney twice. However, there's always a however, and there's no fun in life unless there's a however or another hand. So on the other hand, when I launched talk radio, the show is called Hot Talk in Calgary and Southern and Central Alberta, we were a monster of a hit, and I give myself no credit for that. We were a monster of a hit because people were absolutely hungry for talk radio. They were loading up the lines. They were lighting up like Christmas trees, and we just had an absolutely wonderful time. However, it wasn't wonderful for Brian Mulrooney because he had just brought in a GST. I wasn't big on the GST. My listeners weren't big on a GST. So we were bonded like nothing else.
That's that's so weird that an Alberta-based conservative talk radio audience wouldn't be big on new taxes. That's so strange. Why? What do you think was going on there? Huh?
I'm not divorced from reality. So we weren't just anti the GST. We made a show about it because we don't take ourselves too seriously. Those of us who succeed in talk radio learn that unless it's entertaining, it ain't working. And so we had a very, very entertaining way of letting Brian Mulrooney know in a memo to Mulrooney, which I wrote and delivered every single morning, which was at times, I guess, somewhat personal. I didn't just attack the GST. I attacked, sometimes I made fun of the way Mulrooney delivered. I mean, he had the big baritone voice, but he really leaned on it. Anyway,
an amazing voice.
Yeah, he did. But he leaned on it and he slowed it down and he played with it. And at times the delivery sounded very artificial. So I'd be making fun of that. I'd be making fun of the Gucci shoes. I'd be making fun of some of the other things that he was doing. Like he never went anywhere without this large entourage. And so in my memos to Mulroney, I would tell him that he wasn't the czar, of Russia, that he wasn't one of these dictators that needs to have 1,000 people protecting him, to look very large, to look very authoritarian, and to give him security. We're in a different age right now, unfortunately, where our prime ministers need much more security. But it wasn't that way then. Prime ministers could actually walk around freely without having too many concerns. But Brian Mulroney never did that. He had the entourage. So I made fun of a lot of the stylish aspects of Brian Mulroney, but I also made fun of the substance. So you had the GST, and then on top of that, you had Meech Lake and the idea of writing distinct society, meaning Quebec is a distinct society, into the Constitution, which I thought on a substantive level was outrageous. I'm very big on this country being egalitarian. All provinces are equal. I'm not big on this distinct society BS, and I let people know in some dramatic ways, some entertaining ways, and some ways that embarrassed Brian Mulroney. And I'll never forget having Harvey Andre on, who was the number one guy in the Calgary caucus, and the entire Calgary caucus was conservative. It was just painted blue. Everyone was blue. And Harvey Andre's in the studio with me one day on my show known as Hot Talk. And I said to Harvey Andre, I said, do you have any idea, because I get the impression you're in denial, do you have any idea that you will be losing your seat, and every single Tory, every single PC will be losing their seat in the next federal election in Calgary? Every one of you is gone. And Harvey Andre just exploded. I mean, he just went nuts. He thought I was a radical. He thought I was an anarchist. He thought I was a nut. And it didn't matter to me. I knew what I was talking about because I was in touch. I was in touch with the folks, and that's what the folks told me.
Yeah, and then it teed up, the favorite joke for Albertans for 10 years, which was what Kim Campbell has in common with the Mazda Miata, 2 seats, right? So Brian Mulroney went from a record-setting election to 2 seats, but that's not his legacy.
No. And
his legacy is one of. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Would you agree that his legacy is one of the great prime ministers?
Yeah, because
you don't sound convinced. You're like, yeah.
Well, he did some things that create a legacy for him, and some of it had to do with the budgets. Some of it had to do with what he did for South Africa. Nelson Mandela gave him credit for that. Apartheid wouldn't have been destroyed without Brian Mulroney. Brian Mulroney was the one who had to convince people like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan that apartheid was wrong. It wasn't just wrong; it was dead wrong, and it was dead wrong for countries to be doing business with South Africa as long as they had that kind of vicious institutionalized racism. So that's a part of it. But I just, in the full interest of transparency, I mean, Brian Mulroney's people were so upset with me about how I treated Brian Mulroney every day, and memo to Mulroney and everything else I did. By the way, all of it came true. Harvey Andre did lose his seat, and so did every other conservative.
This was the rise of Preston Manning, right?
That was the rise, and I pressed it on the show, more than once. And the people calling in were not over 90% fans of the Reform Party. I mean, I don't want to say that I was the midwife for the Reform Party, but I mean, I was there, watching it grow right in front of our eyes. So the Mulroney people were so upset with me that a couple of years later, when I was doing a show in Toronto, I was in the building, naturally waiting to go on the air to do my show. I was doing the 9 o'clock show. They considered the top morning talk show, doing the 9 a.m. show. And I was asked to leave the building because the person doing the breakfast show, Wally Crowder, his name, John Tory, who later became the mayor of Toronto, and then the disgraced mayor of Toronto because he was involved in the sex scandals. He had to leave, and it cost Toronto hundreds of $millions to have another election. But John Tory was working for Brian Mulroney at the time. And John Tory said that the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, won't do his 15 or 20 minutes with Wally on the breakfast show unless and until Charles Adler leaves the building. So that's how they were just they were hot and bothered by the idea that Mulrooney might actually see me, or Mulrooney's people might see me, and they just didn't want me in the building. So
where did you go? What did you do?
I took a walk in the snow.
But no, I would literally go out to the parking lot and eat a dilly bar just so everyone could watch you. Just savor every bite, just staring at the window.
I took a walk. I just said to myself, having this reality, having this story is nothing but money, nothing but prosperity, nothing but good news for the rest of my career in Canada. I knew that at some point I'd be going to the States because the offers were coming in, and at some point it was too tempting a dilly bar not to bite into. So I knew I'd be going to the States, and it would mean nothing in the States. But I knew that as long as I was working in Canada, I could be the one to say that a former prime minister wouldn't go on the air unless Charles Adler left the building. So to me, it's a badge of honor.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a self-own. I think that's a dangerous demand to make if that goes public. And here it is years later. But you look at the Mulrooney legacy, and you look at in the 1980s, and obviously his tenure as prime minister, and then you look at the state of conservatism today. Obviously, you talk about the rise of the Reform Party, and then of course the Canadian Alliance, and then everybody knows how that wound up with Peter MacKay and Stephen Harper merging the parties, and yada yada yada, and they formed government. Here's the question: can you even compare? I mean, and if so, how do you do it? The Brian Mulrooney PCs of the early 1980s, let's say like 1984, to the Pierre Poilievre-led Conservative Party of Canada in 2024, 40 years later. Obviously, dramatically different vibes, dramatically different leadership styles. Poilievre yet to be prime minister. But how would you compare the state of the parties with, admittedly, 40 years between them?
Well, the thing is that Poilievre doesn't mind being a junkyard dog. What did you call him the other day? We were talking about.
I don't know.
And this isn't me saying that Poilievre doesn't have enormous talent and can't be the prime minister. I'm not nuts. But you said that at times he's I think you called him an a-hole at times. Is that what you?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like something I might say. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so that's but he likes behaving that way.
I think I said he's not afraid to be an asshole.
No, he's not afraid. Yeah, he's not afraid. You didn't call. Yeah, he's not. That's.
I didn't say he is one. He's just not afraid to be one.
He's not afraid. Not afraid. Not afraid. Come on, Ryan. All of us have some of that in us.
Sure.
I mean, just like we're not. There's no point in getting overly sanctimonious here. I mean, all of us can be that.
It's not. It's not an insult. I'm not insulting him by saying he's not afraid to be an asshole.
But he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind showing that side of him. Okay. He doesn't mind showing. Okay, and doing it very, very publicly. So Brian Mulrooney could be that too. I can tell you. Brian Mulrooney could be that. My column didn't spend time on that part of it because the man just died. So what I talked about was all of the personal connections Brian Mulrooney made with thousands and thousands of people all over the world, and how he stayed faithful to that. And if you had someone in the family who just had a death in the family or some kind of serious illness, Brian Mulrooney would be the first to call. And it was heartfelt. The man was filled with empathy. He was a good human being. I'll say it again. Brian Mulrooney was a very good human being, and that's why so many people around the world are so loyal to him. It's not about ideology. It's not about conservatism. But here's the deal. Brian Mulrooney, when he made a statement to essentially politically dismember his opponent, he didn't tear the country down. So he didn't do this Canada's, yes, the Liberals are in power. They've been in power for a long time. Pierre Trudeau and Sean Turner, blah, 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 blah. Canada is broken. No, he didn't say Canada is broken. And, just most recently, Pierre Poilievre puts a tweet out because there's a National Post story that indicates that some people who've come to this country, some immigrants, are not happy with the country. Okay, fine. Pierre Poilievre puts out a tweet essentially saying that this country is so rife with division and so lacking in opportunity that so many people don't want to live here. And this is a dystopian future that we've got, a dystopian Canada that we've got. I think he didn't use the word dystopian. He used the word Trudeaupian because, of course, he wants to get Trudeau into everything. And this was, of course, his attack on Trudeau technically. but he attacked Trudeau by attacking the whole country, saying that, we're living in nightmarish conditions, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's something Brian Mulroney never would have done. He would have found a clever way of attacking his opponent's politics. It wouldn't have been personal, and he wouldn't have sewered the country. So Pierre Poilievre doesn't have to do that, but Pierre Poilievre chooses to do that. And that choice that he makes is dramatically different than the choice Brian Mulroney made. And therefore, Brian Mulroney, when his favorables were high, they were sky high. And Pierre Poilievre, in doing the way he does politics, is not going to make his favorables sky high ever. And Pierre Poilievre doesn't seem to mind doing politics where he guarantees that Canada will remain very, very divided. Brian Mulroney, God bless him, wanted to unify the country. Meech Lake screwed that up. The GST got in the way of that. But in his heart of hearts, Brian Mulroney did not want to play the division game. He really did want this to be a united country.
The next time you and I chat, it'll be next week. We're going to have by the way, it'll be on a Tuesday. We're going to have the Biden State of the Union canned, and so we'll be able to dig into that. And is it fair to say, as we wrap, that more people are going to be paying attention to how Biden delivers the State of the Union than what's actually contained in it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think he'll need any help in delivering the State of the Union. I think that is where he really performs well. I get that there's ageism in general in our country and the United States, and his age is held against him. But in my opinion, having a person who's somewhat aged but has his heart in the right place is preferable to someone who's mean, genuinely mean, and a person who lives off anger, and a person who is, in my opinion, lacking in character, too vulgar to be a president. There you have it. As always, I put it all for you in the shop window. I'd rather have old Joe Biden than decaying Donald Trump.
Sure. It's like, what is that? Don Cherry saying, it's like you're asking me if I'd rather have gonorrhea or syphilis. Sorry. I don't know who's who in that, but I'm just saying, like, we don't want Trump, so we'll take, like, it's not age. It's not, I know we got to wrap, and Shauna Feth's ready to check in, but like, it's not ageism. It's not, I mean, someone will say, well, technically it's not ageism to point out that somebody at 81 years of age getting ready to embark on another term that's getting, anyway, I've said my piece. I've said my piece. I'm not endorsing Donald Trump, but I just think it's an absolute travesty that these are the two options that the American people have, and it's basically the options that the world has right now, because whoever's calling the shots out of the Oval Office is the most powerful person on planet Earth, and I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee for the Democrats. I just think it's absolutely preposterous.
Your STD metaphors, and albeit borrowed from the great coach himself, is another reason why you're a star, and another reason why I've got to put the blue blockers on. I respect you, I love you, and I honor you, and I can't thank you enough for this.
All right, his past was bright, his future even brighter. Charles Adler, protecting the eyes that have seen so clearly for so many years. You can catch him only here on Real Talk, our first episode of every week. We'll talk to you in just a bit, Chuck. I love Ryan, and I love Alberta. There you go. He makes it clear. We love it. That's why we love him. You can find Chuck on Twitter. I encourage you to give him a follow at Charles Adler. Let us know what you think. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. I saw somebody here, Terry, is accusing Adler of betraying his former party. Says now you must bash Pierre Poilievre at every chance. I don't get that he's bashing Pierre Poilievre there. He's breaking down what Poilievre's political style is. And what is the former party? We just spent 20 minutes talking about how the Conservatives have evolved and changed over the years. What is the former party? Like, did you betray your party, Terry, if you were a progressive conservative, because that was the conservative option in the 70s and the 80s? And then you voted for Preston Manning and Reform. Did you betray, or did you move on? Did your political affiliations evolve? Is what you were looking for out of politics? Did that maybe change? And then as that happened, like when the Canadian Alliance, when they merged with the PCs, right? And created the super party that allowed Stephen Harper to achieve a government finally, and a majority government. Was that some sort of betrayal? I don't think so. Betrayal is a strong word to use in politics. I don't think Adler I think Adler just keeps it real. He says what he thinks. He's not beholden to some party membership. He's a card-carrying member of this, so he's got to believe this and say that. And I don't believe that that's how most people are wired, even though we're being trained. We're being groomed right now to find ourselves in these camps, right? And to just believe these sort of shared set of values that you have to have if you're a member of that party. So you got to feel a certain way about all kinds of things, about how businesses should be taxed, about what parents should be told or not told, about what flags can fly over city halls, right? Well, if you vote this way, you got to believe that it's got to be that way. And I think people are starting to push back on that. Now, how else do you explain our audience growing like it is right now? I think because maybe people think outside the parameters of political parties. People are starting to wonder, well, wait a second, what's good for me and my family? What political values make sense for us, right? I encourage you to keep asking these questions of yourself. We ask them of ourselves every single day right here. Speaking of that, businesses, budgets, insight coming up with Shauna Feth, President and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, in just a quick second. First, this is a message specifically for the most talented engineers in Canada and around the world. Apex Automation wants it on your radar that they're hiring right now. Apex is doing amazing work in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, down in Texas as well, providing intuitive, fully autonomous solutions to industry. They're giving people back their time. If you want to work in edge computing, cybersecurity, data visualization, they do a ton of stuff with horizontal, vertical integrations and Industry 4.0. You can learn more about what Apex is doing and how you could be a part of it as they build a culture where amazing people like you can do their best work. I'm picturing somebody right now. You're driving, you're listening to this, you're walking your dog, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're speaking to me directly. If you got your PNG and you're looking for maybe a team atmosphere where they're going to encourage you to reach your full potential, check out the careers link today at apexautomation.ca. Are you thinking of bringing your outdoor space to life this summer? Well, I'm talking front yard, backyard, maybe a little bit of a tweak, maybe a total overhaul. If you're going to do that, you're going to want to leave it to trusted professionals, experienced designers, talented installers. The team at landscapeedmonton.ca, that's Eden Landscaping, wants to talk to you. You're going to want to get the conversation started now. We're talking to you in early March because by the time their shovels are in the ground, it'll be before you know it. You want to be at the front of the line. Plus, there's a lot of things you might not think about. I was talking to Mike. He's been running this business coming over 20 years now. He said to me, people don't think of things like the supply chain, for example. You want to get, some certain specific beautiful wood or some type of stone or whatever it is. A lot of times it takes longer to arrive than you might think. So you want to get the ball rolling early. Don't wait until June to talk to your landscape professional at Eden Landscaping. Contact them today by visiting landscapeedmonton.ca. Want to give a shout out to our friends at Complete Care Restoration. They are the only Real Talk sponsor that hopes you never call them. However, if a pipe bursts, if you experience flooding, if your community is impacted by wildfire this summer, we hope that's not the case, but of course everybody's bracing for it. We know what's coming, don't we? Complete Care Restoration, for more than a quarter century, has been restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. They're experts in getting rid of asbestos, black mold, you name it. Plus, their team of professionals, these construction professionals, all certified, working in their fields, so you know you're getting someone at the top of their game. You're getting the cream of the crop. You can find them online. File this away in your memory bank at CompleteCareRestoration.ca. First Monday of every month, we're lucky enough to have a chance to hang out with Shauna Feth, the President and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, and it's perfect timing right now, obviously, as the Alberta budget has just dropped. It's nice to see you, my friend. Hope you had a great weekend. A budget weekend, I would imagine your brain was working overtime as you're sort of figuring out what this budget means for business owners, from the small business owners all the way up to the medium and the big employers as well.
Absolutely. And, Minister Harder did a fantastic job. I think he put context around the fact that, not everybody's always going to be happy with the budget, but from a business perspective, seeing that maintenance of our tax competitiveness and the no increases to business taxes obviously is very positive for small business.
Is that something that was on the radar that you were concerned about? Is the taxes being cranked up on business owners? I hadn't seen a lot of people talking about that.
Well, I mean, it's something we always have our eye on, right? From a policy perspective, it's, again, the easiest way to ensure that businesses stay competitive and that we maintain our attractiveness to outside investors coming into the province.
Shauna, what were like when you look at this? Obviously, we're going to be talking through the lens of when we're talking to you, Alberta Chambers of Commerce, it's business, right? And it's obviously there will be employment issues here. We've talked a lot about talent recruitment and talent development in the province. If you had to sort of give like a general theme, if you look at this budget and say, maybe one or two kind of general themes of this budget, I heard someone say recently they liked that it sort of came across as like a state. It provided some stability. What take did you get from it across the board? Like, what were the general themes, would you say?
Yeah, and so from a stability perspective, the Alberta Chambers has been calling on the provincial, well, on all governments, but through the Canadian Chamber as well, for just balanced budgets that see an alignment with debt repayment and with reinvestment into the future of the province. And so we saw that. I mean, I feel like I'm just regurgitating comments from last year, but we were really excited about the fiscal framework that they implemented and really, really happy to see that they're maintaining that line and are really invested. I mean, when you think about it, just debt servicing alone could fund the whole ministries in our province. And so that they're really focused on repaying that debt, paying it down, and investing is really positive. And again, maintaining tax competitiveness. Those are all really positive things for the business community in the province.
So when you looked at that, like they've been bullish. This government has. Danielle Smith's been talking a lot about the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. This budget will allocate about $2 billion into that fund. They're talking about big numbers down the line. Is that something like, to you, does that resonate? Is that a move in the right direction, do you think? Because we're getting kind of mixed feedback from different people depending on who you talk to.
Well, and like I said, you can't please everybody, but I think, really from a provincial perspective, a business perspective, our ability to reinvest in our province and ensure that there's funds available for future generations of entrepreneurs and for our future kids and grandkids in the province is really important.
Do you, when you talk about tax competitiveness, we had some people in our live chat earlier in the show today talking about, I think it was James, that said, listen, Alberta could stand to increase the corporate tax rate or to bring it back to where it was before Jason Kenney and still have the lowest corporate taxes in Canada. Talk to us about the message that you think that Alberta sends to the rest of country, keeping corporate taxes where they are, and how legitimate you think that argument is. Like, businesses either entertaining the idea of setting up shop in Alberta, staying in Alberta, moving to Alberta, moving out of different jurisdictions based on taxes. Like, help us understand where the business mindset's at in that context.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many factors at play here, right? I mean, we've heard this conversation for years about even a sales tax in the province and how that could increase social programs, et cetera. And of course, businesses want their employees, everybody wants our families to be taken care of from a social perspective. But when it comes right down to investment decisions from a business perspective, when you can go into a jurisdiction where you're paying in some cases 5% less tax, it becomes very attractive. And it's a really key selling point for the province of Alberta.
Did you get too into are you paying attention to, municipalities don't seem to be thrilled about this budget. Obviously, we talked to the minister about this. People can check out our March 1st interview with him. He talks about how there's only one taxpayer. The idea being, though, that they're basically kind of downloading costs to the municipalities. Talk about the business impact of that, or the business angle on that. Like, businesses to a certain degree, you look at where businesses are taxed. There's obviously a number of different ways that happens. Are they getting bit by the budget in some way, shape, or form in that context?
Well, and I'll be honest here, I haven't had a chance. I do know that municipalities were not happy. I did see some media on that, and I haven't had a chance to actually take a look at the implications in terms of what was actually allocated to municipalities. I just haven't done a deep dive into it, so I can't speak to exactly what that means. I mean, obviously, The reality is if municipalities are seeing shortfalls because of budgetary constraints, then, they only have a few levers they can pull, and taxes are definitely one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just more like the idea of the infrastructure deficit that they're talking about, which, obviously, I think you and I are both bullish on Alberta's future, and people are predicting, forecasting pretty significant population growth. And so looking at that as something that'll become more and more and more of a real issue down the line, of course. But when we're talking about, drawing people, attracting people to Alberta, attracting investment, does the budget, is it a move in the right direction? Do you think when we take a look, say, for example, at the moratorium on wind and solar that was just lifted, and people would say, well, one of the biggest concerns that a lot of people in industry had on that was they didn't feel like it was sending the right message. Like Alberta was we want to attract investment. We want to have that sort of open for business sign. Does the budget accomplish hanging that sign in the window, the open for business sign? Was there something there that gave you the confidence in that?
Yeah, again, just the ability to maintain a balanced budget and, continue to have tax competitiveness is really important. I think, the moratorium itself, again, there's a lot of mixed messages around that.
Yeah.
And even from our members, we have members on both sides, but part of that was, really the province's intent to look at how to really bring in investment, but realistically think about, some of the challenges that we've had with projects in the past where they've been orphaned, or, municipalities are carrying tax burdens for businesses that have shut down. And I think that was really their intention all along, was to make sure that they put a framework in place that will really support investment into these types of projects so that they can expand and grow in a way that's, being policed in a way that's positive for, Alberta and our economy, and for the businesses themselves that are coming in or looking at investing in Alberta.
People can check out abchamber.ca. I'm going to I'll put the web link here into the show notes so they can check it out on the podcast or on YouTube. But talk to us about this talent development task force. It's the future of talent. This is obviously a huge priority for the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, an innovative and practical workforce project unlike any other in Canada. Why is this so important to you? And what have you learned relatively early in the process here about what employers' plans are over the near future?
Yeah, and so we did a fantastic panel discussion with you, a couple months ago or a month and a half ago.
That was great.
I'm losing track of days. It's been so busy, but really this is a huge priority for us to ensure that we're attracting and retaining the talent in Alberta that we need for the future and for future growth, for things like clean energy projects that we were just talking about. And so we're just excited that we just launched the landing page for the Talent Development Task Force. Again, for those who haven't heard about it previously, it's a partnership between the Alberta Chambers of Commerce and the Alberta Post-Secondary Network, with the intent being that we can get our skilled students into positions quicker through work integrated learning. We can look at upskilling and reskilling through micro-credentials. We can support the work that we're doing, and in a real timely manner through the research, finding out where the gaps are in the province in terms of where do we need skilled workers. And so really excited to be launching that. And I would just plug too that one of the things on the landing page right now is the Cyber Skill Up program, which is really exciting. It's for those who don't know, Cyber is a not-for-profit research and education network, Alberta's not-for-profit and research network. And that tool is really exciting because anybody can go on there and match their skills to opportunities and learn where are the in-demand skills. And, it gives a very detailed labor market overview and is a very important education referral tool. So it's free of charge right now. I would just plug it because right now we are piloting it and putting it out there for everybody to try until March 31st. So I would encourage anybody, if you're looking to upskill, reskill, if you're looking to change your job, if you have a young person in your life that's not quite sure where they're going next, I just encourage anybody to test it out because, like I said, free of charge right now, and something that's an incredible tool to help prioritize maybe where people belong and where those skills are needed and where those jobs are of the future.
Yeah, it uses, people can see it here if they're watching on YouTube, over 80,000 current Alberta-based job postings. So a really neat opportunity to discover your career path. I love talking about stuff like this on the show because I always picture that sort of the one person or the 5 or 10 people that hear this, that actually take action on it, and then it changes the course of their career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just really super cool. So we'll link to that in the show notes, or you can just go to skill-up.ca if you want to directly go to that. But of course, all of it is on the Alberta Chambers of Commerce website. Hey, I'm picking up, I hope I'm not putting you in a tough spot here, by the way. You never mind.
You always do. Yeah.
You're fine. That's the whole point of these conversations. If you're just tuning in on the Mixler live streaming audio app presented by California Closets, it's Shauna Feth we're talking to, President and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. I'm picking up on different vibes on this pharmacare thing. And my understanding is, like, some people are super keen on it. I saw some of the, you're the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. So you guys are like all the chambers, right? And I'm seeing like Calgary and Edmonton, kind of the big dogs in the big cities, calling on the feds. They want to see this pharmacare thing happen, this pharmacare plan. And then as far as I can tell, unless I'm misunderstanding, a lot of the other chambers don't seem to be like super keen on it. So is there like division in the ranks within your membership? Can we clarify what's going on here?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the really impressive thing about Chambers of Commerce is that we are independent in each of our communities. Obviously, as the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, we represent all of the chambers in the province. And but the reality is that our role in everything that we do is to reflect the wants and needs of our members. And so, depending on what our members are indicating, the feedback that we're getting from our members, that's really what dictates, sometimes the positions we take on certain things. So from my perspective, the Alberta Chamber's perspective, we do everything we do is based on research or our advocacy, our policies. And so, we were all part of passing a policy at the Canadian Chamber against a national pharmacare policy. And the Canadian Chamber has also come out very, very heavily against a single payer pharmacare. Just saying that the estimated costs are $40 billion in the next 3 years. And so for an organization that's always talking about fiscal responsibility from a government perspective, just really curious where those dollars are coming from. And then also, that overreach into provincial jurisdiction. And hey, the bottom line is that we all are members of the business community. We really care about all of the people in our lives, and those customers, suppliers, everybody want to make sure that everybody is taken care of in our province. That's just a given. That should just be a given in this province, in this country. But just how that happens and which jurisdiction takes care of those people that are maybe at risk, those people that are in those situations where they have rare diseases or they have high costs of medications, we want to make sure they're all taken care of. But, it has been argued that that could be covered off with those federal transfers increasing to our provinces and letting our provinces do their jurisdictional job in terms of making sure everybody in the province is taken care of. And so, and then there's a lot of other things other than, the cost and the overreach. We saw this last year with children's medication, cold and flu medications that we couldn't get because there was a supply chain disruption. So, when you think about that risk too, if we go to a national pharmacare and we have one supplier, are we all of a sudden going to be put at risk to actually get that supply when the demand is there? And so, we could talk about this a lot, but, the beautiful thing about Chambers is we all consider ourselves family, and families can disagree and still move on. And one of the things we have done, again, because I said from an ACC perspective, it's all about the policy and the research. We released a hot button survey on Friday on this exact topic. Just, we really want to get a sense from Albertans. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? From a business perspective, we've had 300 respondents, and out of those 300 to date, 70% already have healthcare plans in place for their employees to cover their employees and take care of them. And from a business perspective, when it comes, we're talking about talent, when it comes to recruiting and retaining people, that can definitely be a selling point, can be a reason why someone chooses to go to one job over another, is the ability to access those types of benefits. So again, I could talk on this for a while, but it's one of those agree to disagree situations. And we're just going to wait and see what Albertans tell us. And then I can comment more after we see the results.
Next time you're on the show, let's get into those survey results, because I'd love to see more specifics on it. And obviously, we don't have all the facts. We don't have the complete understanding. I know the Alberta government is probably the most prominent of any of the provinces, territories in Canada, basically telling the feds that they'd rather just take the money for that National Farmer Care Plan and administer it how Alberta sees fit. So we'll see how that all plays out, and obviously it'll be great talk fodder for us.
And we'll add to that Quebec came out last week too against it, and so it's not just Alberta.
Yeah, exactly. The Alberta-Quebec thing, very interesting. I proposed to Charles Adler, not completely seriously, half an hour ago. Maybe Alberta and Quebec should just separate together. Sovereignty would bring us all together. You're getting a little nervous right now. It's not the official position of the Alberta
statements
Chambers.
With our colleagues in Quebec all the time. We seem to have a lot of commonality, which people probably would find surprising, but it's true.
Well, and I don't actually find it that surprising. I think that there's a lot. There's obviously major differences, and then there's a lot that the two provinces have in common as well, which is probably a lesson in life. I'm excited to hang out with you coming up on March 14th. You and your colleagues and I don't know, 500-600 other people at least, I would imagine, at the Chateau Lacombe. I will be taking part in your media panel for the 2024 Political Action Day and MLA dinner. And you've got all the big shots in Alberta politics coming out to this. Obviously, it's open to your members, open to the public. Talk to us about Political Action Day and the MLA dinner.
Yeah, we're really excited. We so not quite 600, about half of that. We max out at 300, but we're literally 10 tickets away from being sold out, and ticket sales close at midnight tonight. So that's really exciting. Over 30 elected officials, including the Premier and 16 ministers. So just going to be a fantastic event. We're really looking forward to the conversation, and it's all the things we're talking about. It's a great place to ask questions about budget and pharmacare and all the things that we're talking about to the decision makers. So that's incredibly positive. One of the things that has just been emerging, and we're excited to have you on the media panel, but another panel that we're going to host is just an opportunity for an open dialogue with the NDP leadership candidates. So we have 3 confirmed at this point. We're hoping to get all of them in the room and just give everybody the opportunity to have that dialogue. And again, cider house rules. I think you've said this before on the show when you've talked about our events, but they're not open. They're very much a closed, open, honest dialogue with the decision makers. And, when you talk about that from leadership candidate perspective, that just creates great opportunity for our members and the business community to ask some of those questions and find out about how they're campaigning and what their platform is. So they can make a good decision. Anybody who's part of the NDP party can make a good decision. Yeah,
it's all those. I love when people just invoke Chatham House and you just basically say, whatever is said in this room does not leave this room. It opens it up to a completely different vibe and great communication. I've been proud to participate in this event for many years, and I always look forward to it. You guys deserve credit and kudos to draw the Premier, 16 cabinet ministers, and I think I saw 11 other MLAs showing up. So basically, it's not exactly, but virtually half their caucus, plus to be drawing at least 3 of the NDP leadership. I know that you're waiting on confirmation from Kathleen Ganley, but you've got Jody Calhoun-Stonehouse, you've got Sarah Hoffman and Raki Pancholi showing up already, which is, that's a hell of an event you guys are throwing. So that's great. That's coming up on March 14th. You said 10 tickets till it's sold out, which means by the time this podcast drops, it probably is already, but people can check out abchamber.ca for more. And I'm looking forward to that. That's coming up on March 14th. Is there anything in the budget or anything before I let you go? Obviously, I'm going to see you on the 14th, and you'll be back here the first Monday of April. But is there anything else we didn't touch on that you wanted to cover before we go?
No, just the fact that the day before Political Action Day, we're actually doing an open house. So we invited our chambers across the province to come meet with some ministers, which we're really excited. 3 of them have agreed to do. We'll be going and sitting in on question period, and we just think that's really exciting too, that we can get our local chambers in front of the ministers in a more dedicated way. So that's happening the day before. So if there's any chambers out there that haven't registered yet, we'd be really happy to have you join us.
Great stuff, Shauna. We'll see you soon. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, as always.
Yeah, you bet. That's, again, Shauna Feth, President and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. You can check out abchamber.ca. I would love to see Real Talkers out, or more Real Talkers out at this Political Action Day. It's always a lot of fun, and the media panel's fun because it's just like you get people that are typically, like filing for TV and radio or writing their columns, but then they're in that room saying what they really think, which in my mind is always much more entertaining than reading what they'll file for their publishers. And so you can check that out again. That's March 14th. Coming up in just a quick second, we got an amazing email from Real Talker Brock, who was watching us. You remember we did that episode a while ago. It was the backyard bird count. You remember that? The episode that we did, and it was through the Nature Conservancy of Canada, and they were asking us, all of us, to take 10 minutes over the weekend to check out the birds that land in our backyards and log them for them and report on their website. And it's a way that they keep an idea, or a general sense of what bird populations look like across Canada. It was an awesome interview, figuring out exactly why that matters, and talking about sustainability and diversity and sort of the health of our ecology. And anyway, so Brock wrote in with sent the coolest video. He's a land manager and for a big company. I don't know if he wants me to say who he works for, but it's a good look for him. The fact that this big, huge, massive international construction company that he works for is really prioritizing the health of the animals around us that we share this planet with. So we figured it was like a perfect, positive reflection. That from Brock, coming up in just a quick second. But before we do that, I mentioned, of course, that our Mixler live streaming audio, this is a great way to listen to Real Talk on the go. If you're in your car, you're on transit, you want to listen to us live, we do this from 8:30 Mountain Time for about 75 to 90 minutes every single day. The Mixler audio app is a great way to stream the show, and that's presented by our friends at California Closets, who want to remind you that if you have promised yourself that 2024 is the year that you're going to get focused, you're going to get decluttered, you're going to get organized, California Closets can help you on that journey. As a matter of fact, they can take that journey over for you. You request a free consultation. You talk to them about your number one priorities, maybe the parts of your home that you want to overhaul, that you want to get organized. Is it your laundry room? Is it your home office? Is it your entertainment room where the family watches movies? Is it your garage? Whatever it is, California Closets has the team of designers and installers to make that dream a reality. They'll do it in a much more beautiful sense than you could probably imagine, and more cost competitive than you might think. As a matter of fact, I loved hearing from Real Talkers Dustin and Amy, who told us that their California Closets project came in as the lowest quoted project that they talked to. They said all the other companies were way higher than California Closets. And by the way, California Closets did the install in 1 day. 1 day! Can you believe it? The consultation's always free at californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Friesen Brothers, they're still family-owned. They're coming up on 70 years, still family-owned. Now, we are getting inquiries from some of you, in particular in the Metro Edmonton region, that are asking, when is that Friesen Brothers opening on the traffic circle? I'm going to get local here on 142nd Street and 107th Avenue. So I checked in with them, and they're aiming, I don't want to say this, they're aiming for next month, everybody. But we're going to keep you in the loop. In the meantime, 16 other locations across the province of Alberta. Friesen Brothers understands that wonderful things happen around the family dinner table, and that's why they've always prioritized healthy food, affordable options. I recommend you check out the flyer. You can go to friesen.com. That's FRESON, the Family Essentials flyer. We absolutely love quality food for low prices every day. Of course, you can also just visit them in store. When you do, let them know that Real Talk sent you. Well, I want to give a shout out to Real Talker Brock, who took a second to send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. The first episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today, by the way, at kubienergy.ca. We focus on the positives. We step outside the news cycle, the stuff that can sometimes bum us out, remind us. We need the reminders in the opposite direction. We need to step away from the negativity and the pot shots and the politicking, right? It's Positive Reflections presented by Kubi Renewable Energy, and I love this from Brock, who wrote in and he said, "Hey, Jespo, I love the podcast." He said, "I enjoyed your interview with Justin Trudeau." He said it was candid, informative, but probably won't sway many voters in Alberta. That from Brock. He said, and when it comes to me voting Conservative, I can't vote Conservative, at least not a party led by the guy that's leading him now. The federal NDP is a dumpster fire. Brock says, I'm a federally, politically homeless voter right now, but things could change in a couple of years. He says, "I'm grateful that Real Talk keeps on chasing the great interviews and the great stories." Well, thank you, Brock. And he says, "I heard that your family, by the way, when you were talking about that episode on birds and the backyard bird count within the last couple of weeks," he says, "I heard your family enjoyed some close encounters with an American kestrel." I was talking about that. We've got a kestrel that's kind of set up shop near our yard, basically, and it's amazing to watch this falcon. I mean, it just sounds amazing, looks amazing, such a cool bird. Brock says they are an incredible raptor to handle and to understand. And he says, "I'm fortunate that our company runs up," and you know what? Screw it, Johnny. I'm naming the company. Brock works for Lafarge, which is obviously a massive construction company. And he says, "Our company runs a biodiversity program, which includes and involves kestrel and northern saw wet owl banding programs." That he says we do a private event with the kestrels, and he says if Real Talkers are interested, they could let me know, because we'd love to be able to expose more people to these magnificent raptors. He says, "Anyway," I thought you might be interested. I'm attaching a video from a banding event of ours in the summer of 2023 where he's handling a kestrel." So Johnny, let's roll it. Check this out. For those of you on the podcast, we can try to describe it. But look at this bird. This is absolutely incredible. So it's actually kind of, relatively small. But if you look at this kestrel, how cool is this bird? I hope that some of you are Googling right now. That's Kestrel. I didn't even know that they were in this part of the world, but indeed they are. Absolutely magnificent animals. And how cool was it that when we're talking about it on the show, there was a Real Talker that had personal experience handling these and working to preserve and protect their habitat. You guys never surprise me. Nothing surprises me anymore. There's always a Real Talker with lived experience on something that we're talking about on the show, which is part of what makes this audience so absolutely incredible. Brock, your email filled our bucket, and we appreciate it. Thanks for doing what you do for the living beings on this planet, be they furry, feathered, or otherwise. A shout out to Brock today on Positive Reflections. You can get a free solar quote from Kubi Renewable Energy by visiting kubienergy.ca, and you can send us your positive reflection, whatever it is that brought a smile to your face, that restored your faith in humanity. Just write Positive Reflections in the subject line and email it to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Thanks for being a part of today's show, everybody. We'll be back at it tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer